All right, the Lions at 7. The Lions at 7. That one fascinates me. You mentioned the possibility they could trade down. They got Jared Goff, and, I mean, all due respect, you know what follows all due respect, it's Jared Goff. I love this pick because I have no idea what the Lions are going to do, in part because I don't know who's making the call, Peter. You got a lot of chefs in that kitchen. You got Chris Spielman. You got Rod Wood, who supposedly wasn't going to be involved in football and is very involved in football. You got Dan Campbell. You got Brad Holmes. Everybody but the owner has a spoon in the stew here. I can't wait to see what they do because I have no idea what it's going to be.
Look, Mike, as you start to look at this draft, the one thing that you see when you start to get into sort of the netherworld of, outside the very top, and you look at the Detroit Lions. So the Lions are in a decent space in this draft. They've got 3 or 4 picks basically in the top 100. Their 4th pick is number 101. And I think that Brad Holmes, after having been in Los Angeles, after having been a scouting director, and looking at the college players in this draft, has a very confident feel about what he wants out of this crop. And I think he likes this crop. And it really sort of blends in to the needs of the Detroit Lions. Receiver, offensive line are 2 very big needs. And there are some corners in the 2nd round that they could go get if need be. I really think they would like to trade out. If they stay, I would expect that they would do one of 2 things. That they would either take Waddle or Smith, whichever receiver is left, or that they'd take the second, they'd take one of the 2 tackles. Because clearly that offensive line is something that has never gotten fixed in Detroit.
And I'm just fascinated by their entire draft this year. We know Dan Campbell is looking for badasses, kneecap biters, and the 49ers have done a great job of finding those guys who can flip that switch immediately. And it doesn't matter if you're not practicing tackling. It doesn't matter if you're not practicing in pads. They're going to go out there and they're ready to go. That's how they're built. I think they're going to be looking for guys like that generally. But if Justin Fields is sitting there at 7, that Ohio State connection of Spielman to Fields, I wonder how strong that draw is going to be, because Spielman probably is in position to get a lot more information about Fields than anyone else who's evaluating Fields right now, other than maybe Urban Meyer, and Meyer's already locked in on Lawrence. We mentioned the Panthers. They've got Sam Darnold. They've yet to officially pick up the option. They've said they're going to. It would be a $20 million gamble. They've already made a $33 million gamble on Teddy Bridgewater that they're ready to walk away from. Could they really take a quarterback at number 8, Peter?
I think they could. I think this is a little ballet dance that they're doing because they've got to move Bridgewater. I hear Denver is interested in Bridgewater. And so they've got to move Bridgewater. And I think they could take a quarterback here, Mike. I don't think they will necessarily, but this is one of the pivot points of the draft that I think they look at and they see a large number of options that they like. But I'll just tell you this, Mike. So, a couple of weeks ago, you probably saw that Matt Rule, the coach of the Panthers, went down and spent some time with Jimmy Johnson down in Isla Mirada where Jimmy lives. And clearly, Matt Rule, is a sponge. And I know I've heard people talk about him, and so he's obviously asking Jimmy about a lot of things because Jimmy controlled drafts. And I'll just tell you the one thing that sort of sits in the craw and eats at Scott Fitterer, the general manager, and Matt Rule. Over the last 8 years, the Panthers have averaged 6.2 draft picks per year. And the average number of NFL draft picks over that time is 8.1 per team because of compensatory picks. So I think the Panthers look at basically they've been dealing with a talent shortfall. They traded 3 picks for Sam Darnold. They want to come out of this draft with more draft capital. What better way to do that than to trade down to the Patriots at 15, let the Patriots come up and get a quarterback. They get a 1 from next year and let's say an extra 3 this year, and they're happy.
Ben Fisher of Sports Business Journal pointed out yesterday that the very excellent All or Nothing series on Amazon that would follow a team around for a full season, no edition this year because of the pandemic, and it may be done for good. And that's unfortunate because I learned a lot about David Tepper in a short scene in the final episode, and I've mentioned this before, but he made it clear. Coach, GM, and quarterback are the things that allow you to skew 8-8 into a winning team. The league's set up to be 8-8, and if you have coach, GM, and quarterback, you go in the other direction. And I think they are willingly taking their shots at a guy that could be their franchise quarterback. They tried it with Teddy Bridgewater. $33 million they will have spent. Didn't work. We tried it. Didn't work. Now Sam Darnold. We're going to try it. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. But if that window opens, if the board falls in a way where one of the guys they thought they weren't going to have a shot at is there, that's when you really have to wonder, Peter, whether Tepper gets involved. And we know these owners find a way to get involved. And I think Tepper would be closer to the Jerry Jones end of the spectrum than the owner who has truly nothing to do with the team. You just gotta wonder what Tepper's going to say if Lance or Fields somehow trickle through to 8.
Well, just remember back in 2016 when Jerry Jones desperately, and I mean desperately, wanted Paxton Lynch at the end of the first round of that draft. And Stephen Jones spent 70 minutes on the phone calling everybody in the NFL in their path. You know, will you make a trade with us? Will you do this? Will you do that? And they were offering basically their 2nd round pick and their 4th at the top of the 4th round. And everybody, that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And Seattle finally got a better deal. You know, they wanted the 2nd and 3rd from Dallas. And Seattle finally got the deal they wanted from Denver. Denver took Paxton Lynch. And it's, you know, be careful what you wish for, obviously, in retrospect. But that was a moment where I learned something about Jerry Jones. And I don't know if this relates to David Tepper, but I'm going to tell you. What I learned about Jerry Jones in that way is he could have big-footed Will McClay and Tom Siskowski and Stephen Jones and Jason Garrett. And he could have said, bleep it. We're making this trade and we're moving up and we're getting Paxton Lynch. But you know what, Mike? He was miserable, but he didn't overrule the football people. And so that's what I think that, especially when Scott Fitterer is just there. He just got there. I just can't envision a general manager being told in his first major decision, you know, since he's been on the job. I can't imagine the owner coming in and saying, hey, I know you got this offer with the Patriots to move down or whatever, but we're taking Trey Lance.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.